I was the last UK policy lead for the LIFE programme before we left the EU, so I know firsthand what great work it's funded in the UK, including the Peak LIFE workshop. I work in Defra's Green Finance Policy team. So our mission is to set the policy conditions for more private sector investment to flow into nature. And I'm going to talk about Defra and wider government's approach to doing this. So these are the key themes I'll talk about today. So what is green finance? Why is it important? Looking at the important role private investment needs to play in nature recovery. I'll talk a bit about the government target that Chris spoke about earlier, set to measure stimulation of green finance into nature and how we measure and track progress towards this. And then I've numbered the key kind of intervention themes that I'll talk through today about how we're going to make this happen. So number one, how government is setting the enabling conditions and guardrails for nature markets to develop in a way that ensures high integrity. So that's through the recently published Nature Markets Framework and a new Nature Investment Standards partnership with the BSI, the British Standards Institution. Number two, a bit about our work to support the development of a pipeline of investable nature projects. Number three, a look at the steps we're taking to stimulate the right kind of investment, including through approaches like blended finance. And then number four, a look at our work to green the financial system to ensure that capital market decision makers are taking account of nature-related risks, impacts and dependencies in all investments that go through capital markets. And then finally, a look at some of the remaining barriers and next steps. So what is green finance and why is it important? So the World Economic Forum talks about green finance as any structured financial activity that has been designed explicitly to ensure a better financial outcome. Now for government, there's a lot of focus on using green finance policies to set the conditions for investment to flow into infrastructure and other technologies to decarbonise the economy. But in Defra, our focus is specifically on nature finance. So stimulating investment which directly aids nature recovery, which, as we all know, provides a wealth of benefits to society, including climate mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, clean air and water, health and well-being, the list goes on. And some of which businesses are willing to pay for, which has the potential to create a revenue stream and therefore the potential for private investment to flow. The document on the right is the Green Finance Strategy, the Government Green Finance Strategy, which was published in March this year. And that built on the government's first Green Finance Strategy, which was published in 2019. So both Green Finance Strategies were co-authored by the Treasury, the Department for Business, Energy and Net Zero, BEIS, as was, now DESNES, and Defra. But I think it's fair to say that the 2023 strategy marked a huge uptick in terms of nature finance. So I did a crude kind of review. I did the old Control F to search both documents. 22 mentions of nature in the 2019 strategy, 222 mentions of nature in the 2023 strategy. So you can do it yourself and check, but that's just a crude kind of demonstration of how nature really is starting to be integrated into government's green finance policy. So why is this? Well, the report on the left is the Green Finance Institute's Finance Gap for Nature report, which identified an investment gap of between 44 and 97 billion pounds over the next 10 years, which would need to be filled to secure key nature-related outcomes in the UK. Now that's a figure that the increasingly stretched public purse won't be able to fill on its own. So it's crucial we set the conditions for the private sector to invest to complement the public funding for nature through green finance policies. And the way we frame green finance policy at a very high level in government is around financing green and greening finance. So on the one hand, it's about increasing the flow of private investment into projects that directly contribute to nature recovery, including through the establishment of nature markets. And on the other hand, it's about ensuring all investments made through mainstream capital markets are taking nature into account and recognising their impacts, dependencies on nature. And I'll unpack how we're doing this through various interventions. So, as Chris mentioned earlier, government has set a target to stimulate at least £500 million of private sector investment into nature recovery in England each year by 2027, rising to £1 billion per year by 2030. So it's important we define and establish an accurate baseline to measure progress against this. So we've commissioned FTech, the environmental consultancy, and the Green Finance Institute to define what should and should not count as private sector investment into nature recovery, and also to establish a methodology for tracking progress towards the target and a monitoring methodology. So we're going to establish a tracker to give us a more robust baseline and that monitoring methodology, and we're going to partner with the Green Finance Institute and the Office for National Statistics to gather that data. So this will be coming soon. But private investment is not an end in itself. It needs to be directed at high integrity, genuinely additional nature recovery projects in line with government's environmental improvement plan and associated strategies for peat, trees, etc. that you can see there on the right. So, part of the way in which we'll ensure that high integrity is through putting in place the principles and guardrails for the development of nature markets. So alongside the recent Green Finance strategy, we published the first Nature Markets Framework, setting out principles and priorities for the development of mechanisms for investment in ecosystem services. At the core of the framework is the principle of environmental integrity, building on experience and lessons learned from the development of initiatives such as the Woodland Carbon Code and the Peatland Code, as well as emerging international best practice. It also provides further details on how revenue streams from multiple nature markets and public funding, such as the environmental land management schemes, can be combined or stacked to make it easier to finance genuinely ambitious multifunctional land use. There is more to do on this, but the Nature Markets Framework sets out the next steps on that. A key plank of the framework is our new partnership with the British Standards Institute to develop a suite of nature investment standards, looking at the innovation we're seeing in quantifying the benefits of a wider range of habitats and ecosystem services to attract investment, including the Wilder Carbon Standard and standard for habitats such as salt marsh, soil, hedgerows, etc. The list goes on. And if you're interested in finding out more about this programme with the BSI, there's a webinar tomorrow and you can sign up through the BSI's website. Just search for BSI Nature Investment Standards. And if you can't join tomorrow, there's a wealth of information on the website about the programme. It's currently in a discovery phase, so looking for inputs at the moment to shape it, and then ultimately it will be an up to 3-year programme. So the graphic on the bottom right is a report from the Financing Nature Recovery Coalition that came out a while ago and makes a number of recommendations in the areas of market design, market governance, market operation, and the associated market infrastructure needed to ensure the development of efficient, transparent, high-integrity nature markets, which points to the fact there is plenty more to do beyond the initial nature markets framework. So the framework commits to an update within the next 12 months, so more to come on that. The second key intervention theme I'll talk about is investment readiness. So this is our work to support the development of a pipeline of projects that can operate in nature markets to generate revenue and attract private investment. So a key intervention here is our Natural Environment Investment Readiness Fund, which was launched in 2021 and has so far issued technical assistance and capacity building grants to over 80 projects across England. This funding is designed to be used to develop a nature project to the point that it is ready to operate on repayable private sector investment. So some NERF projects from the first round of funding are starting to complete and transact, and we're keen to share the learnings from these, including through published case studies and at events such as this and the Ecosystems Knowledge Network's annual Natural Capital Investment Conference. The Green Finance Institute have also used the learnings from the NERF projects to develop an online toolkit which takes a project developer through the journey to investment step by step. And that's that snaky looking diagram on the right. Again, available online on the GFI's website. So the Investment Readiness Fund is delivered by the Environment Agency, and together we piloted the approach through a partnership with the Esme Fairbairn Foundation and Triodos Bank. Or more specifically with Dan Hurd, who, when he was at Triodos, and we're lucky that we'll hear more from Dan later on today. We also recently launched our LINK programme, Local Investment in Natural Capital, as part of the Green Finance Strategy. So this is supporting 4 local authority areas to embed natural capital investment into their devolution deals. Again, with lots of emphasis on testing what works and sharing the learning widely. And in the Green Finance Strategy, we also announced capacity building funding support for the National Parks Partnerships and National Association of AONBs to increase pipelines of projects for private investment. So, next slide is about stimulating the right kind of investment into investment-ready nature projects. So this is about our work to stimulate the right kind of investment into projects that will operate in nature markets. So we worked with the Treasury to ensure the UK Infrastructure Bank has an explicit mandate to invest in nature. And they've published a paper on their role in natural capital investment and have recently completed their first natural capital transaction in Scotland. And hopefully that will be the first of many. We're also working with Federated Hermes and Finance Earth on a public-private blended impact fund for nature, which will launch soon with £30 million of de-risking capital from the Nature for Climate Fund that Diana mentioned earlier. And crucially, we need to do more to design public funding for nature in a way that can interact with private finance and not crowd it out, including through things like the environmental land management schemes. So this slide is about our work on greening finance. So our work to make sure that capital markets are taking account of nature in their investment decisions. So the document on the left there is the government's roadmap towards sustainable investing, greening finance. And this takes a kind of 3-pronged approach. It's about informing, so that ensuring decision useful information on sustainability is available to financial market decision makers, about acting, so mainstreaming this into business and financial decisions, and then ultimately shifting financial flows to a nature positive economy. So there are various interventions pictured there. So one of the key ones is our support for the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosures. So this is a global market-led initiative supported by the UK, which is developing a framework which will be published in September. They've taken an iterative approach to developing their framework. It will be available in September in its first version 1.0 form. And this will provide a clear and consistent way for companies to assess, address and disclose their impacts and dependencies on nature in a really clear and consistent way. And that kind of clarity and consistency is really important so that when investors in capital markets are looking for nature positive investments, so they tilting their portfolios away from nature negative investments, they need that information to do it. So they need to be able to compare like-for-like investments, and this kind of framework that the TNFD are developing should really help with that. The UK have also committed to developing green taxonomy. So this will classify economic activities to the extent to which they are green or not, to help with the labelling of financial products, again, to guide investment decisions towards nature positive and climate positive investments. And then the TPT there is the Transition Plan Task Force. So this is another sort of government and market initiative which will develop the kind of gold standard for companies' transition plans to net zero, which will be coming along in the next year or so. I think our role in Defra here is to work with the Transition Plan Task Force to make sure that it's not solely focused on climate, that it's thinking about nature as well. So, you know, how can a company have a nice, clear, consistent transition plan for becoming nature positive as well as aligning with the Paris Agreement? And then the headline bottom right there is an announcement that happened in April, launching some work we're partnering with the Bank of England on and the Green Finance Institute and others to assess the exposure of key sectors of the UK economy to nature risk. So I think all of this work might seem a bit kind of high level or tangential to today's agenda, but I think it's really important because it can help create that driver for more private sector investment into nature recovery. If firms are aware of and disclosing their risks and dependencies and impacts on nature, the theory of change goes that it will ultimately lead to more investment into nature. So I'll finish up by talking about some remaining barriers and next steps. So I think there's a lot more to do on demand side drivers. I talked there about the transparency and disclosure agenda, which could drive more investment into nature. But I think regulation has a key to play here in creating the demand for more investment in nature. So we've got biodiversity net gain coming down the track soon, which is an example of a kind of regulated activity that will lead to the demand for biodiversity units, which a market can form around. But I'm sure there's more we can do to think about that demand side piece, including through regulation, specifically in relation to the carbon markets and thinking about how we stimulate more demand into peatland and trees through the carbon markets. There's a consultation on the taxation of environmental land management and ecosystem service markets live at the moment. This is often cited as a barrier to farmers and land managers using their land for ecosystem services and nature markets. So we're consulting on this at the moment to see what can be done there. That closes on the 9th of June, so I'd encourage all of you to respond to that. I mentioned stacking and bundling and uncertainty as the new environmental land management schemes are developed and rolled out. So certainly more to do to provide certainty to farmers and land managers there, so that they're clear about their options for funding and financing, including through private markets. Data and access availability, I think, is crucial for baselining and additionality, so plenty more to do there. And I mentioned, a lot of this will be covered in the update to the nature markets framework, which is will happen in the next 12 months, including on standards through the BSI programme and more on market infrastructure, etc. So lots of progress over the last 2 or 3 years, but plenty more to do. And I look forward to your inputs today to help inform the way forward.